Welcome everyone. Today we are going to learn about how hydrogen potassium pump in the stomach generate the low pH. So at first I want to mention that this is example of an epithelial cells present in the stomach. This cell is called parietal cell or Oxyntic cell. Now this cell is called epithelial cells, and here one thing you have to understand that this portion of the plasma membrane is called apical plasma membrane, and this portion of plasma membrane, this portion is called basolateral plasma membrane. Why it is important? Because these two portion of the cells face different things. Like the basolateral plasma membrane of this oxyntic or parietal cells face the blood, so here is blood present, and the apical plasma membrane face the lumen of the stomach, so stomach lumen. Now in the stomach lumen, the concentration of hydrochloric acid is about 0.1 molar HCl. This strong acidic medium can kill the pathogen and can denature proteins for the digestions, because proteolytic enzymes like pepsins works at the low pH. Now the pH is very different than the cytosolic pH of these cells. The cytosolic pH is 7.2, and we know that in the blood the pH is 7.4, but the lumen of the stomach is, the pH is just 1. So there is 1 million fold difference of hydrogen ions in the lumen and the cell. So how this lower pH is generated? This is done by this hydrogen potassium pump. This is a P-class pump. Now what is P-class pump? In my previous video I have mentioned that under the ATP-driven pump there are 4 different class of pumps present: P-class pump, V-class pump, F-class pump, and ABC transporter. In case of P-class pump, phosphorylation of a subunit, specifically of amino acid called aspartate amino acids, actually occurred. So phosphorylation occurred. So this is a hydrogen potassium pump. In this case, hydrogen ions are actually export out of the cell into the lumen, and potassium actually comes inside the cell. Potassium. Now this extra potassium actually moves out of the cell through this potassium channel also. So this potassium actually moves through these channels out of the cells. So this is a potassium channel also present in the apical surface of the membrane, and this channel is called the chlorine channels. Through this chlorine channel, chlorine actually comes outside of the cell. Now in the basolateral membrane there is chlorine bicarbonate antiporter is present. Through this chlorine bicarbonate antiporter, chlorine actually comes inside the cell, and that chlorine actually goes out of the cell through this chlorine channel that is present in the apical surface, and bicarbonate ions actually transported out of the cells into the blood. Now how bicarbonate ions is generated? Because carbon dioxide actually diffuse inside the cells, and this carbon dioxide react with hydroxyl ions through an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase that makes the HCO3 minus. So here this HCO3 actually comes outside the cells through this antiporter. Now how this hydroxyl ions are generated? Because of the breakdown of water into hydroxyl ion and the H plus ion. So HCl actually generated. Okay, the potassium that enters through this pump actually come out through the channels, and this potassium circulation can occur. Okay, now one thing I want to mention, there is clinically tested medicines present that can inhibit this hydrogen potassium pump, because this pump actually lowers the pH of the stomach, and it can also cause one symptom called heartburn. heartburn symptom. So to prevent this, scientists have discovered that a medicine called omeprazole can inhibit the H plus potassium pump directly. So it can prevent the heartburn feelings or symptom. But one thing I want to mention here, that this epithelial cells, these parietal cells or the oxyntic cells, also express some receptor basically. This receptor is called histamine 2 receptor. Now these histamine 2 receptors actually bind with histamine 2. So when someone takes food, so when food intake occur, this histamine 2 actually binds with the receptor of these cells, and what they do, basically these hydrogen potassium pumps are not always present in the apical portion of the cells. They are actually stored inside the cells in the vesicles. In the vesicles, these pumps are actually present. So there are so many vesicles present inside the cell. Okay. And in these vesicles, these pumps are actually present. Remember this. Now when we take food, this histamine 2 actually binds with the histamine 2 receptor, and by the signaling of these vesicles actually bind to the apical plasma membrane and fuse with the apical plasma membrane, and then this hydrogen potassium pump actually come into the apical surface. Now one category of medicines also present that can inhibit the histamine 2 receptor, and by preventing this binding of histamine 2 with the histamine 2 receptor, you can also actually down the symptom of this heartburn. These medicines are called ranitidine, famotidine, etc. So by these two ways, we can actually relieve the symptom of heartburn, because if these histamine 2 receptors can be blocked, then this vesicles that contains this hydrogen potassium pump will not fuse with the apical plasma membrane, then less amount of hydrogen will be come out. But omeprazole can directly inhibit this hydrogen potassium pump. So I think we have understood how hydrogen and potassium pump generate the lower pH in the stomach, and this lower pH is important for the digestion and killing of pathogens.